prices of food items, essential food items that human beings cannot do without, they have gone beyond the reach of Nigerians. So we all agree that there's a need for salaries to go up. But as rational human beings, we must also be very critical that this increase, what will be the implications for the workers and also for the government? In what way are we going to increase this salary that will not be counterproductive, that will not lead to hyperinflation, that will not lead to loss of jobs, that will not lead to a lot of unforeseen consequences? You know, probably you'll be traveling from Lagos to Abuja, you'll be asked to go and pay 50,000 naira. So we need to sit down and look at these issues thoroughly. And that's why we're saying both sides should come with figures to convince, put it in the court of public opinion, so that when you are swaying arguments, people will be able to understand your position. I understand what Labour is saying, that, okay, we want to defend the principle of collective bargaining. That's a form of strength for them. But the reality also is that the subjective conditions in every state differ. What Ekiti State gets as IGR, the number of civil servants in Ekiti State, the number of workers is not the same as what you have in Zamfara State. It's also the same with what you have in Sokoto State or Lagos State. The cost of transportation, if you go to Ibadan, you can still get transportation for 50 naira. I'm even shocked. You can even still buy food in Ibadan, 200 naira. Because it's a traditional society where people still do subsistence farming. But you can't do that in Lagos. You know, so each state has its own peculiar circumstances. And that's why state governors cannot be taken away from the broad spectrum of the negotiation. They need to be involved based on what they receive from the federal government, what they can afford to pay. I don't think it's something that we can wish out. So I respect that opinion that state governors, they are critical stakeholders in determining what they can pay for workers in their own state based on what they get at the end of the day. And Labour at each state level should also be part of that negotiation, because they are the civil servants. They know what each state governors get from the federal government. They know what the governor spends on security vote. They are the one that sign out the memo, take it from one table to the other. So they are in a position to know whether, for instance, Kwara State can pay this particular amount or not. So I think we need to look for a balance to appreciate and understand each other. That you cannot wish away Labour, you can also not wish away state governments. They need to, and also the federal government. They need to work together to arrive at a common position.
All right, BKO. Labour says governors taking over this negotiation will turn them to beggars.
I don't think that Labour can even, governors can take over the negotiations. It's a tripartite thing. And the federal government is leading the negotiation on the part of the federal government and the federating units. So then Labour stands alone, and the organized private sector stands alone. So the federal government has two caps. It's representing the state governments and it's representing itself. So governors can't take over the negotiation. But I get the argument of the NLC. And I've said before that we have to decide what kind of minimum wage. We have to probably take a second look at the minimum wage law. The suggestion by some governors that states should pay what they can afford is unconstitutional. That's not what the law says. What the law says is that there shall be a minimum wage below which no employer of labor shall be permitted to go. So once you have that situation, it doesn't matter whether you are part of organized private sector or you are federal government or you are state government, you must adhere to the minimum wage law. That's why we take it to the National Assembly. The National Assembly adopts and the president gives his assent. Once the president gives his assent, it becomes law.
Well, Vicky, nothing has been happening to those governors who have been paying below 30,000.
Yes, that was why I also said on this program that we must not turn this to a farce. We must not turn it to a joke, whereby Labor will insist that, oh, it has to be 250,000, it has to be 400 and something thousand. You know, they came from very high. And I said, if you can actually push the federal government to pay, you can embarrass and harass Bola Ahmed Tinubu to pay a certain amount, but you have no guarantee that those governors can pay. Ideally, what the law says is that the Minister of Labor shall be the implementer-in-chief of the minimum wage, which means it is his responsibility to ensure that every employer of labor, including state governors, because they are the employers of labor in the public service of their states, his her duty now is to ensure that they all obey the law. So we can't, without amending that law, we can't be suggesting that, oh, let every state pay what it can pay. The only way you can have that conversation is if the law has been amended. No, you can't say let every state pay the minimum wage that it can pay. It is called national minimum wage for a reason. So governors, if they want this minimum wage regime to change, they must be prepared to approach the National Assembly to change the minimum wage law, so that you then, from state to state, you can have your own minimum wage. You can peg your minimum wage. Even in America, we have states who pay above the national average. States like Massachusetts, for example, they pay above the national average. So states pay based on the strength that they have. But our law, just that the same law before the deregulation of petroleum prices, just that the same law says, okay, you sell petrol at the same price nationally across the country. And when we knew that that was impracticable, we then came up with Petroleum Equalization Fund. And we started paying tanker drivers bridging claims. So the extra costs that they bear to ensure that we are able to sell petrol at the same equilibrium level across our country is maintained. So you pay them extra money for driving all the way. You know, some of them will be on the road for more than a week to take petroleum products all the way to the north, because we want petrol to be sold at the same price across our country. That was the regulation. But today, you can see that it's not happening. And for a long time, even in the southeast, they were not selling at the price of Lagos. In some states in the north, they were not selling at the price of Lagos, because these associated costs continue to mount. So we find it difficult to have a national petrol pricing template in the real sense of the word. So I believe that we'll get to that, because this debate, you cannot squash this debate. States like Rivers, like Lagos, like Ogun, what they can pay, because they generate, and even FCT, let me not forget, because FCT now is next to Lagos in terms of IGR. What those ones can afford to pay, Zamfara cannot afford to pay. Ekiti may not be able to pay. The number of civil servants vary from state to state. States like Benue, states like Oyo, states like Lagos, they have a very high number of civil servants. The more civil servants you have, the higher your wage bill as a state. So all of these factors, if you put all of these factors together, you then see that it is not right to imagine that all hands are equal, that all states will be able to pay. So maybe an amendment to the law. But to simply think that without an amendment to the law, the states, those governors shouldn't even be making that kind of that kind of conversation, because they know that the law stipulates that it must be the same national minimum wage that everybody pays. Now, as you said, people are not complying. That's why I think that at some point we have to amend that law to permit states to pay what they can afford. So people will even migrate from state to state. When they say that, let me go and work in Lagos. So that's people who can provide skilled labor, not artisanal. Let me not even.
All right, anyway, this new debate, this new conversation, does it have the tendency to drag us backward and erode the success or the efforts we've made so far?
If we manage it in a very honest way, if the governors are ready to shed the weight of what they pay, to place their priority right, I think this is a momentum era that we should realize that we need to do something about workers' wages and that we should do it with the best of intentions. So I agree with what Babajide has said, that law is part of it's one of the fault lines of our federalism, because the states are just not equal in strength. And I think the NSC should also realize that we need to work towards amending that law. Do you know that even this 30,000 naira, some states are not paid? Are not. So it's one thing for you to say, okay, minimum wage is going to be 70,000 naira. For some states, they will just ignore it. Then you start going to court and all that. So we need to be realistic and work together. Have a minimum wage for the state, below which no state must pay, anything that is less than that. So I hope we have to resolve this quickly before it gets out of hand.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our final conversation for today. The proposed traditional institution law in Sokoto State has sparked heated debates nationwide. This led to people calling for the protection of traditional institutions in the country. As such, the Center for the Promotion of Sharia has warned the state government against tampering with the revered Sultanate Council, which is a bastion of cultural and religious heritage in the country. The center added that traditional institutions like the Sultanate Council are the bedrock of society and should be protected. Also, a former vice president, Atiku Abubakar, added his voice to the debate by saying traditional institutions should be insulated from the arbitrary influence of state governors. Bikio, this conversation didn't start today. What's your take?
I don't know what really has come over some governors that they want traditional rulers to be very much involved in politics. They want to be sure that this traditional ruler is singing from the same hymnal as they politically. And traditional rulers are not supposed to be involved in politics. Just as, in my view, pastors, especially big pastors, should not be involved in politics. You see a pastor who owns a church as big as the BLM's church, or this pastor from Benue State, the one with probably the biggest auditorium in Nigeria now. Enenche. How do you, as a pastor of a church that big, make it clear that, okay, this is the political party that you belong to, or this is the political party that you are preference for? In your church, if a church is that big, because I've been to a Nenche's church before. My first Sunday service of 2019 was in a Nenche's church. And we walked around it, my family, my sons, and my wife. We decided to go around the circumference of the church. And it took us 45 minutes. Yes.
That big.
Go there now. We weren't running because, as the vice president said, we are not preparing for Olympics. But we walked around it, and it took 45 minutes. Walk around the circumference of the church. Is that big? Now, In a church like that, you will have people from different political tendencies. They may not support what the pastor, the political party that the pastor has sympathy for. So what do you do with such people? That's why leaders, when they get to that point, they should try to be even-handed. Your political preference must not even be known to everyone. You can criticize government if they don't do well. That is the job of pastors. Their job is not to hobnob with politicians because they will damage themselves. You can criticize. You can advise governments on what to do because you are like father of all. But if you now make it patently clear that this is the party that I have sympathy for, then I say, man of God, you are not doing the right thing. That is my opinion. Traditional rulers are in the same mold. Traditional rulers are supposed to be insulated from politics. But increasingly, Nigerian politicians, being so notorious as they are, they want the traditional ruler to be someone that they can go to bed believing that is going to support their party. Traditional rulers do not have to support a political party. But see what we are doing. If a traditional ruler is chumming to somebody in government, somebody big in government, if that person loses the election, the incoming government would then feel, this one didn't support us. We must do our best to remove him. In fact, there was a slogan before the governorship election in 2019 in Sokoto, and to some extent too, that slogan was popular in Sokoto before this last election. Sabon Gwamna, Sabon Seriki, Sabon Gwamna, Sabon Seriki, new governor, new king. And when they are talking about Sabon Seriki, that is new king, they are talking about the Sultan. And the institution has got to be respected. We can't have a situation in which a governor, just because the military removed the Sultan, does not mean that a governor should now subject a Sultan to ridicule and make it clear that they don't like the Sultan to the point that their supporters will be singing Sabon Governor, Sabon Seriki. This Sultan was so harassed that at a point even thugs carrying kegs of petrol went to his house when he was away, but the wife was there, and they were threatening to burn the place because some people had given the impression that this Sultan is not for us. It took the brigade commander to send his men to chase those boys away. That is the level to which we have sunk. And it didn't come to me as a surprise when the Sultan made that statement. I mean, when the vice president made that statement that the Sultanate is dear to us, we don't want anything to happen. It's because the rumor had been there that the Sultan is a target. That rumor had been there. Now they've amended the law. In the past, if they are because the Sultan is the only first-class traditional ruler in that state. It's not like Kogi. In my hometown, for example, there are two first-class kings, my dad and the Oluade. Both of them are first-class kings. So you can imagine Sokoto, as big as it is the entire state,
just
one first-class king. The Sultan used to be the one. Government conceded to him the power to appoint district heads and all that. Now, this amendment that they are trying to do is meant to take that power away. And I've been told of an event where the Sultan was embarrassed. That's why even after they came out to say, no, we are not targeting the Sultan, you can see that some people came out to say no. is still a target. So the Sokoto state government has a lot of work to do to disabuse the minds of people who believe that the governor has this goal to remove the Sultan from office. I believe that governors have a lot more to do to ease the pain on our people than simply focusing on turning traditional rulers to politicians, blackmailing traditional rulers to support their political party, and when it looks obvious that this person will not support us, we'll now look for a way to remove him from power. We've seen even in Osun, some of it is happening. Some of the people who were appointed by the last administration, you can see that the governor most famous for dancing has taken steps to ensure that those people lose their, do not become confirmed as traditional rulers. This is not what we expected. Traditional rulers, and you can see what Atiku, let me quickly quote what Vice President Atiku is saying. He said, traditional institutions must be protected from the arbitrariness of state governments that threatens their stability. When the structure of ascension of traditional rulers is unstable, you know what he meant by that? When the structure of ascension of traditional rulers is unstable, it's because you are trying to change the law, take away the power of the Sultan to appoint district heads. It will become equally difficult to maintain peace and orderliness in communities. Although our constitution in its current format does not ascribe any recognition to traditional institutions, our experiences show clearly that they perform enormous roles in the economic life of their domains, as well as maintenance of peace and security in communities. They governed well. The institutions must be protected, preserved, and not be destroyed. It is therefore on this basis that I lean towards the advocacy that calls for constitutional reform that will not just recognize traditional institutions in our body of laws, but also define the responsibility of their offices. You know? So the governors have so much power, and they are misusing this power in the local governments, in even what they do. You can see that in Kaduna, the traditional ruler that was removed, he regained his tool through the courts. We are waiting to see whether this current government will restore that person, the traditional ruler.
All right, Adeoye. Now, what do you make of this issue between the governor and the Sultanate Council?
Well, I think, first of all, we must realize that the position of the Sultan is not just an ordinary traditional institution. It's extraordinary in the sense that, apart from being over 200 years old, it has been a center of pride for Muslims across West Africa. So it's not just an institution, that you can compare with some others. Since 1804, when the jihad began, after Yunfa wanted to kill Usman Afudu and he migrated to Kudu, launched a jihad there. That jihad spread to almost every part of the northern part of Nigeria, up to the Lorne, and had spurred jihad across Central African Republic, Southern Sudan, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Nigeria. All of which today owe their allegiance to the Sultan in Sokoto. So if you tamper with this institution unnecessarily or with vengeance, it's going to have ripple impact, not only in Nigeria, but across West Africa. Today it is the largest, at the time it was the largest Muslim empire in the whole of West Africa, having almost about 1.2 million slaves, the biggest in the whole world, except Southern America. That's in the 1800s. Even when the British came in 1801, they dissolved it, but they had to retain it again because they knew that this is an institution that they cannot toil with. In as much as governors have powers over economic, religious, and social affairs, any law you want to make must be with the best of public intention to defend public interest. In this case, the Sultan that we are talking about, I have not seen him as a reckless person that speaks anyhow. He has maintained some level of decorum since he assumed that office. I've never seen him making any inflammatory statements or even aligning with any political party, except that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Some governors just feel that, look, anybody is so powerful, I must bring the person under my control. But we must be careful. It's not, if you can do this in other states, you may do this and it may turn against you. So I will advise the governor of Sokoto State to let sleeping dog lie. He should allow, I mean, what's your business? And you see, most of the time, these governors act on rumors. Some people just go out to them and say, oh, we saw the Sultan. Maybe the president sent somebody to him. A Sultan?
The state government even said this is to promote transparency, accountability.
No, there is an agenda behind it.
Some of these traditional
we have seen it clearly, even from those defending the governor, that the Sultan is overstepping his bond. We know that there is a plan to cut his power and also to remove him. That's it. That's it. So we just want to advise the governor, because the Sultan is there for everybody, whether you're in Labour Party, whether you are in PDP, whether in whichever party, because his followers belong to different parties. So he cannot just come and say somebody wants to come and greet in his palace, then he will not attend to that person. So the current governor must understand that. He should allow the Sokoto Caliphate as it is. He should not tamper with it. That's our honest advice to him as Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, young Nigerians are watching and they can see the power of the monarchy diminishing day by day. How do we bridge the gap when it comes to our traditional institutions and traditional institutions and modern governance? Yes, that's my question.
The law, I guess we have to take a look at the law again. Traditional rulers, the way they are now, just as Article suggested, they need to be given specific roles to play. Maybe in the area of security, for example, I believe that they have roles to play even in local government administration. A traditional ruler is under the local government chairman. The local government chairman is his boss, no matter how big you are. The local government chairman is your boss. That's the way it's designed. At least I know that because I'm the son of a king. I know how these things work. You may be the biggest first-class ruler or paramount ruler in Nigeria. You are under the local government chairman. The law, they have to take a second look at the law to make it much more difficult for governors to even be choosing, because sometimes people will pick, kingmakers will pick a traditional ruler, pick someone as king, and governor will say that's not the person that I want. Obasanjo, when he received the verdict of the kingmakers of his town, and it wasn't his friend, he collected the sheet of paper where they wrote the name of their choice. He tore it and ate the paper, chewed the paper. Eventually, he had his way. We are saying these sort of things are not necessary. Let the kingmakers choose who they believe will best represent the traditional institution. But when governors are so overbearing, and you then call, normally kingmakers should only sit in their palaces, But when governors send for kingmakers, bring them in and say, no, this is the person that we want, it's absolute rubbish. Governors need to behave themselves. The extreme use of power is not good. It's even ungodly. You can't say because today you are a governor, then any little thing you want to remove a traditional ruler. Why? Why? Why do we keep threatening the traditional institution? This generation of governors, they need to be spoken to. The misuse of power is too much. This is a fact. A lot of them are my friends. But I'm not afraid to say this. What are you stop picking my calls? It's not the end of the world now. But the truth has to be told. Why would anybody be threatening the Sultan? This is a man with respect, with influence, traversing the entire length and breadth of our country and beyond. And he's carried himself well, just as Wale said. He's carried himself well. He's not one of those traditional rulers who spew a lot of rubbish. I mean, it reinforces our heritage as a people to live those traditional. Look at Ojude Oba, who, except a sadist, will not be happy the way people came out and celebrated their monarch. Who, except a sadist? And of course, there are many sadists on social media. You see the way they were gaily dressed. Everyone was happy. They honored him. That's the way it should be. You should leave the Sultan alone, for God's sake. Stop embarrassing him at public events just because you have the power. But power, just as Patience Jonathan told us, is transient. Today you are in power, tomorrow you may not be in power. Don't forget. Governments go. The people don't go anywhere. And they will remember the role that you played to embarrass a popular traditional ruler.
All right.
They will remember. Certainly they will remember.
All right.
Leave the Sultan alone.
With what Biki has said, let's leave it there, and I hope the governor thinks about this. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your insights on the program today. Babajide Kolade Otutoju, Adewale Adeye. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, everyone. That's all on Journalist Hangout on Sunday. Join us tomorrow for the regular episode of the program at 5 p.m. You can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode tonight at 11:30. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.